Okay, how do you rebuild intimacy part 2 after an affair or cheating in your relationship? If you've not watched the first part, please go back and watch that first. I'm going through different steps that are beyond physical and building the intimacy back in your marriage, helping you repair and rebuild your relationship. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is taking time for your relationship. So a lot of times when we're married or been with somebody for a really long period of time, I'm talking like over 5 years, especially when you've been together longer than that and you have kids involved, your relationship is bottom of the barrel economically. So what I mean by that is like the kids take priority, or the job takes priority, or different things in your life, like maybe the home takes priority economically. Whereas it should be the opposite. Your marriage should be number one priority economically. So I'll give an example of this. We had a friend come visit and they were having conflicts in their marriage. The intimacy had completely broken down. And I asked her, I said, well, what's your love language? And she said quality time. And I said, okay, well, when's the last time you and your husband took time for each other? And she said, honestly, we haven't been on a date in probably over a year. That had built up a lot of resentment with her, and their communication and their intimacy had broken down. So I said, you know what? I'm going to watch the kids for you. Let me watch the kids. I live close to Disney. I said, go with him to Disney, just the two of you. And she's like, are you serious? She's like, I would love that. And I said, yeah, go, go have fun. And they did. And she came back and she almost was in tears. She's like, wow, it just completely reconnected them and rebuilt that intimacy. So find out what each other's love languages are. That's going to be my next point. Each of you has a love language, whether that's quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation. There's others, gift giving. I know I forget the fifth one. I'll paste it down here. So anyway, figure out what your love language is, because that's going to be so key in how your partner receives love and how you receive love. It's going to be different. And when you start to make that a priority in your relationship, people notice. So I would say that that's second. The next one is going to be sharing common interests with each other. So one of the stories I heard when we were in marriage counseling was that when you are in the beginning of your relationships and you're dating, you want to impress that person. You want to put your best foot forward, right? Because you're engaged and you're interested in them. And there's that spark. Well, you had that spark at the beginning of your relationship. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be dating. And at the beginning of your relationship, what were some of his common interests that you took interest in? So like, for example, I'll throw in golfing for right now. Maybe he likes to golf and he wants to go golf with his buddies, and you're resentful because you're home with the kids and, he's away while you're watching the kids. Well, what if you took the time to go golfing with him? Said, hey babe, I would like to go golfing with you. Is there a time we can set up a date where I can go golfing with you? And by the way, ladies, like, you don't have to wait for them to set up a date. You can set up a date. So learn to romance your partner too. And I think that would probably shock him. Like, what if it's video games? What if it's going to the movies? Whatever it is, he has an interest and you can partake in that hobby. The other thing too is I am an advocate of affirming positive hobbies. So anything that doesn't have to do with porn or lust or anything like that, anything that's harmful to your relationship, if it's a good hobby, a way for them to detox in a healthy way, I affirm that. And that is something that has really helped our relationship. I personally love to go kayaking. I love going kayaking. And my husband, I said to him, I would like to take you on a date where we go kayaking. And he was like, okay, I'll try it. And we had such a good time. And it really helped us rebuild intimacy going on that date. The next one I'm going to talk about is spiritual intimacy. Now, if you're not a Christian or spiritual in some way, I think spirituality is so important. It's going to help with your moral code. So everybody has a moral code. This is something too, an exercise that my husband works with a lot of men on figuring out, because they have forgotten it over time. They think that they have moral values, but are they actually living those moral values? So figuring out what your moral values are and how you want to affirm those and how you want to live up to those. And ladies, like, you are essentially the moral compass in your relationship. What you say and what you tolerate goes. So, he's going to be comfortable with whatever you're tolerating. And if you're saying nothing, if you're just like whatever, then he's going to go, okay, well, she's fine with it. So you need to really communicate to here, like, these things are not okay with me. These things actually hurt me. And instead of reacting, again, go back to my part 1 if you haven't already, but I talk about coming from a place of reaction and going to a place of grace instead. So learning how to communicate with grace in these spiritual areas and things that you would like from him. And I understand if you have a partner that's really hesitant to this, maybe he's like, I don't want to go to church, I don't want to pray with you, I don't want to read the Bible, finding other things that you can connect on a spiritual level. Maybe it's looking at nature, maybe it's taking a walk, maybe it's looking at some old churches in a historical place. Whatever it is, find something that you can connect to on a spiritual level. And the last one I'm going to touch on is physical intimacy. And this can start with, like, I talk about this a little bit in my part 1, that when you're connecting with your partner, men tend to be just attracted physically and then want to basically become physical. But as women, we want to be romanced. We kind of have this like time where we build things up. I mean, intimacy can technically start at the beginning of the day and result in the bedroom during the night. So building physical intimacy, it's hard for these guys to understand it because they're so used to looking at porn, and they're trying to practice porn in the bedroom because that's the only example they've had of intimacy. Like, that's what they think intimacy is and connection is, and it's not. That is a very abusive act that they're watching. There's no intimacy involved. So in the bedroom, like, you guys can start, I can't talk about it here, but essentially, kissing and holding hands and cuddling and having, if you don't know what this is, Google it, aftercare, so those are all things that can happen. Eye-to-eye contact in the bedroom, that's important. And so sometimes men who've been involved in porn, that's actually really hard for them to do, but that actually builds intimacy over time. Refer some books that would be really helpful for you to read, and there's definitely some amazing podcasts that you can go and listen to. If you just search for men and intimacy, you're going to find a lot of great podcasts for you and him to listen to. And the last thing I want to say is that, especially if you're listening to this with your partner right now, men want intimacy. They just don't know how to get there because they've been taught through the years that porn is the example. But once men find this, ladies and guys, once you find this, it's very hard to go back to your old ways because that is what you're looking for, and you're just not finding it in the right places.